I'm live. Let's see. Okay. I don't know if anybody can see me. Sorry about that, folks. We got dropped there. And I was trying for a wee bit to see if I could do anything to get you back, but YouTube doesn't really actually give you anything to do except you can either try and end your stream or not. So I hope some of you can find me again. And there's somebody in the room at the very least. Do apologize about that. That's just pretty much YouTube, I'm sure. We're not exactly heavy on the video and sound from here. So if you could let me know if you can still hear me, folks, that's not a great start, is it? Getting cut off like that. Shame. Well, I'll keep going, and hopefully if anybody can hear me, what I'll be able to do, I'll try and stick these two bits and pieces together. I see we got bounced there, but hopefully some folks can find us again. Dear, oh dear, what a shame. We were just chatting about the appendices there. And Appendix 2, I suppose, is also of real interest and reveals quite a lot of clues. Especially looking at religion. So ecology and religion tied hand in hand, that each one has a full appendix. And I'm just wondering, is that... I think, is that the one? Is it Appendix 3? Appendix 3 is the report on Bene Gesserit motives. I think I've lost everybody here, folks. Yeah, this is the wee bit. I don't know if anybody's watching. Excuse me, which is that the third appendix is on the... Not everyone. There's colleges and cannibals. Hi, yeah, it's hateful when that happens. I don't know. We're not broadcasting at super high def or anything like that, but it just seems to be one of those things that happens to us. I don't know. It's like every 10 or 12 episodes, I suppose we get bumped. Hi, Chaya. Thanks. Sorry about that, folks. As I said, it's just one of those things about doing this on YouTube, and don't really have much control over it. I do apologize. I'll try and knit these two episodes together or something if I can. I'll just put them both up. Actually, I suppose when we get these episodes getting split up. Nobody watching, you can tell all the secrets. It's all good. Send out a tweet, perhaps, if anybody gets it. Then ask people to follow you there. Yeah. As I said, generally, I don't know. I assume these things are just to sort of appear up on the station when we're live. So if I do get cut off, I'll usually do my best to try and get back on. I'll push. I'll just sort of give it a bit of patience, etc., and see if anyone can hear me. But at a point where it's just sitting there doing nothing, and YouTube's not very informative. It's not even easy to tell if you've got video sound or anything, So I'll just shut it down and restart it. But there doesn't seem to be any other means of doing anything with it, I do have to get ready for work, says Joseph, but I can catch up while I'm there later in the ship. No problem, Joseph. As I said, we're just running through a few wee things tonight to get us all sorted. We'll be piling into chapter 1 on Sunday, and I think it'll probably take us a couple of sessions to get through. I said I've made about 113 notes on chapter 1 just alone, and there's a lot happening in it. It's pretty dense. There we go. We're all turning back up. That's what we've got a station for, I suppose. You know where to find us. This is the wee bit from the third appendix. I said hindsight is a wonderful thing, and this is the one that I like to point out to people. This is to do with. So we're not going to tear into the appendices today, but it is if you're preparing to read Dune, they're useful to look at. But we're going to do it as if we're reading the book from fresh, starting at the beginning, going all the way through to the end. So the only thing that we will kind of keep referring to is the terminology of the Imperium, which is a very handy thing to be reading Dune with, So it's just this little bit here. It's the 5th point on the report on Bene Gesserit motives and purposes. And it just says, when the Arrakis affair boiled up, the Spacing Guild made overtures to the Bene Gesserit. The Guild hinted that its navigators who used the spice drug on Arrakis to produce the limited prescience necessary for guiding spaceships through the void were bothered about the future or saw problems on the horizon. This could only mean they saw a nexus a meeting place of countless delicate decisions beyond which the path was hidden from the prescient eye. This was a clear indication that some agency was interfering with higher order dimensions. And it's that wee part as it goes on that I suppose it's just goes on to say that in the face of these facts, one is led to the inescapable conclusion that the inefficient Bene Gesserit behavior in this affair was a product of an even higher plan of which they were completely unaware. So it's one of those things that there's something whenever we get to the end of June, we kind of should, if we read it very carefully, we should realize that there's stuff going on here that's not quite and they all thought it was their idea. So the Almanac, which is Appendix 4, gives some basically biographical details and dates to the Emperor. Some of the main characters: Shaddam IV, Leto Atreides, Lady Jessica, Lady Alia, Vladimir Harkonnen, Hazimir Fenring, and Glossu Raban. So it's an odd selection of. Some of them make sense, some of them not so much. And of course, then we have the terminology of the Imperium, which is really, really important to reading Dune, I think. And as I said, it's a pity it's not in the other 5 books. If I was the publisher, I think it would make a good addition to each of them. Certainly for helping you when you do read the other books, you don't have this too handy, I suppose. And we'll be seeing some pretty interesting words, I suppose, from all over the place within there. But that's how Dune is divided up. There's 11 sections to it, from dedication to the terminology of the Imperium. And I suppose one of the things that we were talking about is, do we go past this prologue there with the first appendix? Can we spoil Dune for you? Should we be doing spoiler alerts, this kind of thing? The answer is no, because the author does that for us. And I suppose in terms of what we call foreshadowing, etc., within reading a book, we don't actually have that. It's actually foreknowledge that we get. And a wee example of that is putting Paul Muad'Dib in the cartographic notes for the map. It kind of takes the mystery out of it, that we know before we've hit the first chapter that Paul is Muad'Dib. And I think it's interesting. It's meant to sort of complement, I think, the idea of Paul's prescience as we go along with the character. He gets to see. We kind of get the sense to know what it's like to know a little bit about the future. And I suppose that's the other interesting thing about Dune, in terms of how the narrative works. All of the really key important things, I suppose, that any good author would want to hide from you. What's going to happen? Are they going to get, but who's the traitor? All of this kind of stuff, they're handed to you on a plate right at the start of the book. There's very little mystery in it. I was almost considering there's more mystery trying to figure out who, as Gaius Hal Mohim moves through the first chapter, there's more mystery in trying to figure out what her name is before, than anything else. I suppose we know certain things, and our narrator is a third person, omniscient narrator. The whole idea was, and the fact also then that we're looking at history. So within the Dune series itself, each chapter is presented with in the first Dune book, they're all kind of different books by the Princess Irulan. We get the sense that she's the main documenter, the main historian, and if we understand the Atreides family very well, propagandist, if you like, for Paul Atreides at this point. So the epigraphs that we get at the start of Dune are being told from a point of view that's in the future to the events that we're witnessing. Even though we'll encounter Irulan later, there's a sense that you think because she's in the action that she's a commentator from the near future, and I would argue it's not the case. I think this is a sort of embedded history. And so what we're looking at is that we're getting flashes of foreknowledge in Dune, given to us by Frank from the third person omniscient narrator, and we're also getting these epigraphs that look back at the events that we're talking about. and it gives this kind of past future. It allows the reader to get, if we take a moment to think about it, to understand that Frank's trying to give us a little bit of a sense of these ideas in terms of what it would be look like to see a glimpse of the future while while understanding the past in that way. And I suppose in terms of what the book is all about, in terms of the Bene Gesserit motives, this idea of other memory, race consciousness, fundamentally about human evolution and where are we going, and I suppose that a lot of science fiction presents excuse me, a lot of science fiction presents, when it approaches stories about evolution, tends to pick one thing and go, that's how we might evolve, and occasionally maybe two, for compare and contrast. You get I suppose a good example of this is the Martians in the War of the Worlds are meant to represent how mankind could evolve. In terms of social Darwinism, I suppose 1 million years down the road, um, yet Wells presents us with, I suppose, two different opposites of um, evolved humans in the time machine. We have the Eloi and the Morlocks, both interesting with sort of biblical type names, if you like. Um, yeah, so instead in Dune we get multiple paths, and we not just I suppose how life on different planets might affect human beings as they evolve there, but we also have separation of gender, and we even to a degree get separation of religion and so on in terms of how humans evolve. Um, the cultural, I suppose, separation is not quite as easy to see. It's more immersed within. We get that much more with the Fremen. But as to what kind of culture the Atreides are kind of really from, or any of the other houses, it's not that they're not that well fleshed out, I suppose. Hmm. So in terms of starting away, I suppose that's having a wee look at these different appendices is worth it, and particularly within the first chapter. Um, I've been going through tonight just how many unusual words pop up within the first chapter, how they pop up, I suppose, and particularly certain terminal. If we didn't have this little guide at the back of the book to help us, it could be quite a bizarre. It depends, I suppose, on how well you read you are, how familiar you are with some of these terms, and within the terms at the back of the book, we've got obviously words derived from Arabic, from English, from German, from Latin, Greek. I'd argue there's a couple of Irish kind of words in there. Um, and there's little references, even things like the Cheops, for example, pyramid chests. Cheops is Khufu, isn't it? Another name for harem, the Egyptian pharaoh. There's little clues in this book, little nods to things, I suppose, and particularly within the terminology. Um, there's a lot of different mythologies overlaid into Dune, I suppose. And the one that I would argue, of course, is that I'd say that the main mythological structure that's overlaid on Paul and his family is that of it's obvious, it's in his name. It's the Atreides, the sons of Atreus, which are of course members of the Pelopid line, which are one of the major dominant sets of mythology from Greek mythology, and in particular known for whoa holy very very heavy, grotesque, violent stuff, and the name of the family of Atreus are associated with homicidal, uh, you know, of familial homicide, murdering within their own family, cannibal, all sorts of pretty gruesome, horrible things, and they're a family that is considered cursed by the gods. We've done a few wee videos on the Pelopids, just the basic set of myths that feature that line of that family. In understanding that, there's a sense of where the conclusion of the Dune series would go. Pardon me. And if that's the case, it would kind of head towards. We've heard it may have had a democratic ending. Excuse me. Something on the lines of the conclusion to the Oresteia. But the family name itself has an awful lot of suggestions and an awful lot of connotations. So, and in particular, there's another set of myths that are overlaid on top of Paul Atreides, which is the myth of Oedipus, to do with the Theban line. And yeah, arguably, yeah, all sorts of Greek mythology stuff there. Within that, there's a whole overlay of, I'd say, Arabic and Islamic culture, particularly with moving into the Fremen, and cultures like the Bedouin and the Bushmen of Southern Africa, sorry, are also heavily influential on the construction of the Fremen. But there's actually little pockets of all sorts of cultures that are part of their makeup, including the Irish. There's Central and Southern American cultures in their stories and mythologies and culture, etc. as well. So the Fremen really are. I mean, as much as I'd argue, I think that very much the Arabian and Islamic cultures are dominant in their construction, particularly the Bedouin. They're a real melange as well, a real blend of different peoples around the world. And in terms of just how we read Dune, I think that's one of the nice things about it to look at. I like mythology, sagas, and epics, this kind of thing, from all over the place. Hey, oh, something popped up. So James Smith says, thanks for elevating the conversations and education around Dune, unlike any other channel on YouTube. Thank you very much, James. Something just happened that I still haven't figured out how to get working on my channel, but thank you very much. It's very kind of you. Doc, how many chapters has the first book? David, I'm not too sure. I think it might be in my own silly head that it's got about 35 or 36. And me attempting to do a couple a week, as I said, might be ambitious. So we're really going to take off this Sunday. I mean, we're starting a wee bit now, as I said, just skirting around the issues, I suppose, having a look around the borders. But the first chapter, there's a good 9 pages in my book, and it's I suppose with a book like Dune, the introductory chapter is going to have an awful lot in it to talk about. And I'd argue the first few chapters are really thick in terms of but I think it's done so well, and particularly the Frank's almost subliminal, I think, in a few things that he's up to in the first chapter. So I'm not too sure, but again, it's not one of those things that we can look at the different chapter headings, but maybe somebody actually knows. Yeah. Well, by the way, Mr. James Smith, thank you very much for that donation. Thank you. Yeah, we're going to try and do a few wee things to get us up and running a bit more professionally, hopefully, here on the station. But as I said, for anybody who is joining us, if you had to pick somebody to do this with, and I know there's other book clubs there, I suppose I do come at it from a few different perspectives, but arguably I'm one of I suppose professionally I'm one of a handful of people on this planet that you should pick to do this with, because I know that I've known this stuff inside out, I suppose, but I've got to the point where I was starting to forget about a few things, so it's going to be an interesting exercise in refreshing my memory, I have to say. I'll tell you, let me see, just having a wee look at it. The chapters talking about the epigraphs, as each chapter is framed with one. We get the from the word epigraphine, which means to write on in Greek. All the chapters in the Dune series begin with epigraphs. The further we go down the books, the more varied they become. As I said, there are various books in Dune written by the Princess Irulan, histories, child books, commentaries, these kind of things. As we move down the Dune series, we tend to bring in more historians, more different kinds of texts, including things like bibliographies, hagiographies, these kind of things, and they're pretty interesting, I have to say. And one of the things that is Dune begins with one of these epigraphs, and it's arguably one of its really famous quotes, I suppose. A beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that the balances are correct. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do today here, set up the balance, I suppose, and get your feedback, by the way, guys, because as much as it's going to be me gabbing and doing an awful lot of that, my real hope is just to interact with you, because and to get your input on this too. You're going to notice things that I don't. Every person's different. It's one of the reasons why I stopped becoming a lecturer in the whole computing business is same thing day in day out. Not much change, but everybody's got a different viewpoint of a book. A book is relative to you and your own personal experience, and I think this is one of the reasons why Dune is so popular. Is there's bits of all of our cultures. Doesn't matter where you are in the world, you'll find something in these books. I think that you can relate to if you have that kind of your own cultural understanding. If you see what I mean. Marcin Kot says, "Hello, have you ever seen Polish covers of Dune books made by Wojciech Sudmak?" Hopefully, I'm pronouncing excuse me, his name correctly. Danny Villeneuve admires his paintings. I have, Martian. I think I've used them at some point um, within my Dune PhD videos, the Dune series Piled Higher and Deeper. Um, One of the things that helped that work evolve that's on YouTube, and I hope you can take a wee look at it on the station, is that by adding all of these different artists and their images and trying to get as much public domain stuff as well, um, I suppose academically to the work, it made it so much more accessible, so much more understanding. So I'm a big fan of a lot of the Dune artists, and I think as much as I know Denis Villeneuve admires his painting, there's a lot of them I think that were kind of overlooked in the kind of run of the recent film, if you see what I mean. And quite a lot of these, some of them are professional artists and some of them are fan artists. And I do have my favorites, but if you look through my videos, you'll see I mean, we do our best to reference these people and hopefully send some work their way because that's all we can do, I suppose. But yes, I don't know. Some of the Dune covers the international covers are really interesting. There's some crackers. I think is it the Israeli ones are really quite far out there, and they're kind of well, I say the Israelis one. They must be of a certain period. I think that's around. Probably around the David Lynch movie because they use, I suppose, the look of that, but they're very esoteric and kind of a bit kooky. I would say I think they're really cool. Should have I've tried to use as many different covers of the Dune series in the videos as possible. But yeah, it's a really interesting thing actually to take a look at the Dune covers over the years, um, from all the different countries. But I even actually really like looking at the fonts. How Dune is written, how Frank Herbert is written in different languages. So there we go. Uh, yeah. So can we read maybe 2 or 3 chapters for the next session? David, in terms of reading, read ahead. For the next session, absolutely. I'll be just taking them one at a time. So you read at your own pace, folks. I'm going to hit chapter 1. Pretty much on Sunday. As I said, this was really just to say hello and get a bit of feedback as well from you. I actually thought, yeah, we can pile through chapter 1, and maybe we can. Maybe it's just me being a bit of a pedant, but I tend to know a lot about this stuff, and I'm also very for a long time my job is to pick other people's work apart. So I do have a wee bit of an eye for detail, and if you like trivia, I suppose is the Roman goddess of crossroads, sorcery, and hounds. Like I, then we've got a fair bit for you, and I think hopefully it'll open up our understanding a wee bit of certainly what Frank was intending to do with the book. Because it's a thing that I think has been lost a wee bit, I have to say. So yes, I've seen those Polish covers on eBay. They are beautiful. Marcin Cott says you pronounce my name, surname, and artist name quite well. Thank you. I'll do my best to try. And it's a bit difficult because I can't really hear you guys. But covers were not made for Dune; they were bought by the Polish publisher. I think I watched a program about that artist as well, not too long back. Yeah, I wonder what it would have been. I think it got me wondering, did he do any covers for at the time? This has come back a wee bit, I think, a few months ago. I think it got me wondering, did he do any covers for Lem, Stanisław Lem, that kind of thing? Hmm, there we go. So yeah, and as I said, I'm open to idea, and if anybody does have any questions about as we proceed, fire away and let me know. So just commenting about these wee sort of epigraphs that start. And as I said, Irulan's also a major character. She's key to the throne, and therefore almost all of the political machinations that are in the book. I don't think we saw her in the Denis. Well, there's a lot of people we didn't see in the Denis Villeneuve film, I suppose. But the other one thing I just wanted to give you a wee bit of info on before we tear into it is, I suppose, there's a degree of reality to Dune, and there's a degree of you're going to find out from me that Frank isn't as smart as you like. Frank's not that smart, and there's a lot of Frank's ideas that you've come to know and love over the years are scientifically wrong, sadly, and they're not massively important in that sense. But I will point them out because and it's one of the things that maybe I don't know. I would have loved to have had a chance to talk to the man about it. Sometimes I think he does certain things deliberately, but there are absolutes within Dune, particularly within several of its philosophies, from my point of view, if you applied the old reductio ad absurdum, you'll reduce them to the absurdity that they are very quickly. Those old classicist tests. If we can make something sound particularly stupid, then it probably is, I suppose, is the point of that. But one of the wee things, just from an old pedant's point of view, I suppose, is Arrakis is a real place, as I'm sure you know. But for those that don't, I thought I'd give you a wee bit of info on it, and that there's a mythology and a story in behind that place. So Arrakis, as we know within the Dune universe, is the third planet of the Canopus system. Excuse me. Within the terminology of the Imperium, this is what Frank tells us, that it's a planet. Now, in reality, Arrakis is a star, and it's Mu Draconis Alpha. And what's interesting about it, I think, let me see, I've scribbled a whole lot of this down so I didn't make a complete hash of trying to remember it. But I particularly like astronomy and the various mythological stories that are attached to particular stars and so on, and how those stories of, I suppose, about the night sky and the constellations change throughout cultures around the world. What you're looking at often is mythological tales applied to religious ideas, but attached to the heavens themselves. So I think stories like this tell you an awful lot about culture all over the world at different times. So Arrakis is, I suppose, in the modern world attached to the constellation Draco, the dragon. It's one of the ones that we get to see all year round where I'm at, because we're pretty far north here. And its real name officially as of 2017 is Alrakis. So its other names are Arrakis and Arrakis. And this is one of these things, again, taken from Arabian culture, I suppose, Arabian astronomy. A lot of the really great names of stars, I think, come from Arabic. I've got one of my favorites is Razelhaig. I think that's a great one. Excuse me. It's one of those names that's just stuck in my head over the years. So it's interesting just to let you know a wee bit about the mythological stories behind Arrakis. And it's known as in certain times, ancient times, known as the trotting camel. But the term, I suppose, Arrakis literally means the dancer. I think the dancing one, or the dancer. It's a set of stars which make up a little. It's the stories to do with a bunch of other stars that are around it. It's Rastaban, Eltaman, Kumet, and Grumian. And I suppose in the ancient world, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, and I hope everybody will apologize. I hope everybody will accept my apologies for any mispronunciations. As I said, we always try our best. All in the ancient times, when it was Alawad, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which meant the mother camels. And this one I'll probably do better. The Romans called it the Quinque Dromedari, which means the 5 camels. The story is to do with the Arabian story, apparently, behind this is to do with the different stars, Rastaban, Eltaman, Kumet, and Grumian, form a circle around the star Alruba, which is the foal. And the idea is that the mother is coming to protect the foal, surrounded by the circle of camels. That's Arrakis coming, plotting the the trotting camel, the dancer, heading towards the circle, while the other camels protect the star Alruba from two wolves, which are the stars Aldebaran and Athabine, which apparently are Zeta Draconis and Eta Draconis. There you go. So in ancient times, I think that the point, I suppose, is that it's one of those interesting stories, and I'm wondering if that's why Frank chose it for the name of his planet, Dune, and chose to, I suppose, make it a planet rather than a star. But it's an interesting story, I suppose. I suppose a parent protecting a child, this kind of thing, circle surrounded by wolves, and it kind of fits a lot, doesn't it? It really does fit with the narrative of what's happening in Dune. So it's just one of those things, I think. And whereas I think today is, again, it's about a different constellation, how different cultures. I think the Arabian culture didn't see those group of stars as being part of a dragon. If you see, I mean, they have a different set of stories with different animals based on the your, I suppose, your environment and how your own how your own society develops in a particular part of the world. So I think it's a really interesting little thing. We're going to encounter lots and lots of wee mythological stories. We'll try and run them down and figure out, try and pick them up culturally. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know if I'm probably quite happy to start a wee bit today. We'll be putting all of this stuff up, I suppose, but we'll run tonight till about 11, and that'll give us a couple of hours, and then we'll tear into it. So I don't know if anybody has any questions for me tonight, by the way. Fire away, folks, and I'm happy to just re-chat. I'll just refresh your memory, by the way, for anybody who's just joining us. What we've done, so what we're going to do, we've done a few wee things tonight just to set this up a wee bit and chat about Frank and the Dune series. Dune it's a decent sized book, the edition I have. 577 pages. As I'm aware, I think that the entire Dune series by Frank Herbert comes to over 1 million words. And I think you can read it in short little chunks, and it's a very enjoyable read. And I think this is going to be read number 10 or 11 for me, if I can remember. So what I've done is I've been, for your benefit, I thought I don't want to be unable to answer any questions. We have annotated the heck out of the first chapter, and we're going to proceed to do this. I was actually saying to my wife, or maybe consider giving up this book, making this into some kind of prize at the end, because we've been doing our work pretty much fresh, I have to say, because I lost a lot of stuff to do with this. So, and really, for those of you who are going to have a look at this book, I don't know if there's any English lit students out there, but we'll certainly have we'll pick out the things that you might need to know about, style and how Herbert works. And he is a subtle writer, I suppose. It's not that obvious what he gets up to. Sometimes it is for me. And an opening chapter in a book is a really, it's a really important thing. And he's being quite obvious in telling us that, as a beginning, as a time to get his balances correct. And he starts it with, this every sister of the Bene Gesserit knows. We get a little piece of history. And it's a little bit almost, everybody knows this kind of thing, or at least every sister of the Bene Gesserit knows this. How he feeds his information in the first chapter is quite interesting. Covers are not made for Dune, but they were bought by Polish publishers. This is Martian. Some of their graphics were made for Dune books. I'm wondering what ones I'm thinking on, but I've certainly put the chap's stuff into. Where can I copy? Oh goodness! You know what I've just done? Actually, I'm going to stop right there. My hard drive was getting a bit filled up. Actually, when I just realised I've just dumped an awful lot of images and video files. Really, I've put stuff onto a backup drive, but I just literally thought, oh, I'm starting new videos and stuff, and I have folders and folders and folders. They're taking up mucho gigabytes. But there we go. So yeah, I mean, guys, in terms of if you do have any questions about how to proceed or about reading the book, and I said some of you might be wanting to listen to an audiobook. So in terms of for Sunday, and I said feel free to read on. We're going to start from a beginning is the time for taking the most delicate care that the balances are correct. That's page 3 on this current Hodder trade paperback. And we're going to just go up to They Tried and Died, to the next epigraph, which is to an attempt at understanding of Muad'Dib without understanding his mortal enemies. So that's the way we'll work, just in terms of where we're going to discuss up to. And as I said, I don't know if I hope some of you might want to write on your book side. And as I said, we'll put this stuff up. I don't know. It depends on if you're studying the book or you just want to enjoy it and find out a wee bit more about it, I suppose. But yeah, as I said, I went out and specifically bought this one just to and it's interesting the way it's being portrayed, I suppose. Winner of this is the blurb on the back for this edition, and I said we were talking about how it's not got the usual blurb from Arthur C. Clarke. Winner of the Hugo Award, winner of the Nebula Award, and then it's before The Matrix, before Star Wars, before Ender's Game, and Neuromancer. There was Dune, one of the greatest science fiction novels ever written. And yeah, there we go. It's not the big. And it's got tiny bit of writing about Frank Herbert on it. He was born in 1920 and died in 1986. His career includes stints as radio news commentator, jungle survival instructor. He's best known for creating the world of Dune, which established him as a master of modern science fiction. So it's. I mean, the interesting thing is it's a 50th anniversary edition. There's nothing particularly special about it, except that literally they've written 50th anniversary edition on it, and that's it. There's nothing special about most of these paperbacks. The one that I have, I suppose, which this is the one that I read the last time, and I read it properly for the first time, and it's let me see, not too sure, is that Victor Gollancz? It is. I think this is 1999 edition, and it's known as the greatest science fiction novel of all time edition. The reason why I like this one is it's actually got John Schooner's all of his original plates in it, and it's a good weight, not massive, and the writing's quite dark and easy to read. In fact, it's much easier to read than in my new edition, but not such a book that we would scribble on it. But I'm a page folder, I have to say. And yeah, as I said, we've got a few other things. So if we'll do our best to look up and figure out any questions, etc. Because there's plenty to know about Dune. And as I said, we can read it in many, many, many different ways. Let me just have a wee nosy. I scribbled down just a few points about it, but I think, as we were saying, some of you might want to read it a certain way. You can read it from. We're just saying we can read it from an evolutionary point of view, an ecological point of view, a critique on dangerous heroes, a critique on science fiction heroes. You can read it as a sort of cultural analysis of sex and gender and politics. You can look at it as a critique on religion. You can look at it as an ecological primer in terms of things like hydraulic despotism and systemic thinking. It's an anti-war book. It's a critique of empire. There's so many, and also, I suppose, a good approach is psychological. You can also approach it as a Bildungsroman, as a coming-of-age novel, the first book only, really. Though I'd say you could do the same for Children of Dune with Leto II. And yeah, it's going to take us all over the place, I suppose. There's one other thing I wanted to say, really, about Paul Atreides. Whenever we get to look at Paul Atreides, I don't know. There's an awful lot of people who Paul's a great hero and he's meant to be a great hero, and arguably he's meant to be is an attempt to create the greatest hero that science fiction has seen. He's and not in terms of how strong or you know all super pot this kind of ideal, but he's meant to be the hero that appeals to us and should appeal to us on many levels. And the one thing that I want to say to you is this, that a lot of people will go with the argument that you're you're not going to figure out that Paul's not what he appears to be until you get to Dune Messiah. I'm going to disagree with that, and I will pick out the points I think where you should go pay attention to that, have a look. He's not, and it's just you just have to catch little things, but he's not the nice, that we think he is. And as much as we have an omniscient narrator, we don't get everything that's going on in there, but there's little clues to his character. And I said it's just not just the name Atreides, but that is highly suggestive. And I do believe that the choice of Paul was from Paul of Tarsus. David said, the size of the letters in your new edition is bigger enough to read it without problems. Many of the old stuff uses very small letters. I couldn't agree more, David. In fact, do you know something? I've got a new book from a gift token. Oh, it was a birthday present a couple of years ago from my mother-in-law, and I like gift book tokens. That's why I'm a book person, and happened to be Alan Moore's. Oh goodness, what's it called? Jerusalem, and you probably know me. I, as I said, I have a penchant for these, the books that are in little boxes. I particularly like editions like that. It was in the bookshop and I went and bought it. Thought Alan Moore, I've been loving his stuff all my life. Been reading him since I started, reading 2080. The writing, is so small. It's. I would need to get magnifiers, and I've never read it. It just sits on the shelf. I think I'll give it to somebody young who's got 20/20 vision. But it's and I'm not joking. I've got a few different pairs of glasses here, but it's reading glasses are something I'm new to only the last couple of years. I'm afraid I've been using glasses for distance a long time. But I couldn't agree more, David. And interestingly, I've got a lot of Philip K. Dick stuff here. And I don't know if I have a lot of the older, the small pulp paperbacks of Philip K. Dick, and I'm looking forward to sort of reading them all again. But a lot of them, the writing is beyond me now. I'm going to have to start looking for larger print books. But it's an attempt to squeeze as much writing on things sometimes as possible. If you look at that, what are you about to do with that? Seriously, that's the biography of Frank Herbert in that thing. That's like it's ridiculous. It really is. So yeah, and yeah, it's a thing that's starting to. I'll pick up a book, and I'm a person who's hoarded books for a long time. I just pick up, not massively, but I'll buy a book in a secondhand bookshop and go, well, that'll be nice for a rainy day, that kind of thing. So the bulk of the stuff I have in the house I've read, but I've a fair chunk of stuff that I haven't read. And I've just been kind of revising through, running through some of these old books, and the writing is minuscule. It's it's becoming a real problem. But that book by Alan Moore, Jerusalem, and I know there's different. It was an attempt to get it into a box set. The writing is miniature. And I can't read it. And I said I keep a couple of different pairs of glasses. So yeah, it's becoming a thing. And I don't know. Some books I've been reading. Tiger, pretty much. I've got a really good size of text, But it's starting that I'll not buy a book based on the font and how difficult it is to read. I have to say it's a bit crap. But yeah, it's find a good. I don't know. A lot of the paperbacks, these kind of trade, the Dune ones are often the same size, and the books are pretty full. They're big and busy. So I actually tell you something. Funny enough that you're saying that, David. Because I'm going to start doing some work on the Culture series and make some videos on the Culture series as soon as I get done with Alfred Bester. And I just bought a new copy of Consider Flaybass. because I'd lost my old one. And the writing in it is tiny. I have to say, I'm not that impressed. And so I didn't buy a new copy. I bought a second-hand copy. And there we go. The writing is not good, I have to say. And even if you just look at to comparison, with Tiger, it's darker, but it's smaller. And I actually have the original Orbit version of Use of Weapons. And I was considering reading through that, and I managed to get this in the second-hand bookshop the other day, which is the publisher's edition of Use of Weapons with much bigger writing. So and actually my copy, all the writing is I've read it quite a few times. It's a really good one. The writing's all faded off, sadly, but yeah, it's becoming a thing, I suppose, and maybe it's just a thing to do with age, or our eyesight. But it is a bit sad. Yes, we definitely like. And then you want to return to really old books. That I've got quite a few books from the 50s and stuff, and some of them are grand. But yeah, you get these little tiny ones. I've a very tiny copy there of the Frank Herbert's the Green Brain. These little things here. It's not very, very pulpy looking, isn't it? And the writing is minuscule. And I thought, if I'm ever going to read that again, it's got to be a new copy. Really, I can't read. I've read it, annotated the heck out of it and stuff, but it's not a good read, by the way, folks. I have to say, it's a bit. It's not too bad. It's fits in with that kind of 50s kind of pulpy fiction, But yeah, it is. It's a bit of a pain trying to read these things, and I'm trying to even scribble notes with one type of glasses, office glasses, and then you want reading glasses, and I'm writing over here, and it's all a bit this, that, and the other, But there we go. So no, as I said, I'm just kind of. I wanted to kind of tear into it tonight, but I thought it would be best to introduce everything, and basically, as I said. If everybody that way we'll give people time to read chapter 1 for Sunday. We're literally, I've got tons of stuff here all ready to pile into it. Look at words and their origins and what Frank's trying to do. And I'm trying to really just hold back a wee bit from today because so it's good. We're hoping we pick up a few new people in here, and we really do want everybody on the same page, just in terms of where we begin from and the reading. And as I said, if anybody does want to read ahead, fire away. There's no rigid rules or anything, and we'll see how quickly we can get through things, But I've got quite. I've ended up. I've got quite an. I don't know how many. Let's see. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28. Oh goodness. Okay, so I've done 32 pages of notes on chapter 1, and I sort of just wanted to make sure it was all done. And we'll be doing this for the whole thing. Chaya Rivka says, "What's your favorite Herbert book besides the 6 Dune books?" I think you asked me that one recently, didn't you, Chaya? It's The Dragon in the Sea, or Herbert's preferred name for it is Under Pressure. So it's Herbert's first novel. Has got 3 different titles: The Dragon in the Sea, Under Pressure, and rather rubbish title of 21st Century Sub. I've got 2 copies of it up here, actually, but again, one is somewhere, one's falling apart somewhere. Well, there we go, there's The Dragon in the Sea. I really love the cover of this. It's one of those nice little. I don't know. The art is fantastic. Does it tell you who it's by? This edition is not for sale in America or Canada. Dear oh dear. Yeah, psychology, religion, anti-war, ecology. It doesn't have any chapters. It's like it's a powerhouse of tension. I think that's what's and it's got you'll see stuff in it that you'll find in Dune, and it has, I suppose, from my point of view, it's got some overlay of Irish mythology and stuff in it, and I suppose real things. The submarine, and it's called the Fenian Ram, which is named, I think, it's based on a real submarine actually. But Captain Sparrow as well, I suppose. It's a really good book, and I think it's very very tightly written, um, and I suppose that kind of powerhouse of tension that you get, and I suppose you not only get it, but it's a particular type of tension that you get in submarine books. Sorry, that's my dog eating its plastic toy, making all that squidgy noise. But that's my favorite, in terms of his other books. Um, and I've read a bunch of them, and I've skim read a few of them, and there's a few I haven't read at all. Um, but I've nosed my way through most of Herbert's books. But yeah, I didn't like the Green Brain at all. So Dragon in the Seas is his first book, then Dune, and then the Green Brain, that'll be his first three. Um, but it's hard to say, I suppose. Yeah, I think Hellstrom's Hive's pretty good, isn't it? The White Plague, I suppose, is and it's the White Plague's been so long since I've read it, I can't remember it, but that's the kind of Irish one. And I suppose the White Plague comes off around the same time as the God Emperor of Dune. I would talk about some of the Irish kind of mythological hint, I suppose, shadings and stuff that are in the Dune series, and you get particularly a few of them within the God Emperor, especially as he refers to the Fremen as the museum Fremen. But the White Plague's kind of Herbert's kind of Ireland IRA book, isn't it? It's about a it's one of those revenge books, isn't it? About a scientist who takes revenge on the IRA by creating a genetic plague. Just to say, give me ideas. But China says, I see many ideas developed later in Dune across his other novels and short stories. Absolutely. I think really though the Dragon in the Sea in particular, if you have, especially when he talks about fluid dynamics and the idea that the submarine is a hermetically sealed environment, the external environment to it's immediately fatal to those inside. There's a lot of particularly the Jungian psychology, and it is it's there's a particular bit, I think, of I'd have to have a wee nosy at it again, that particularly the psychology of the submarine crew being reborn, if you like, as they launch. I think it's very similar to the rebirth of Paul Atreides as he steps out of the still tent. That's sort of at that point he is Muad'Dib. So yeah, absolutely. Chaya, many ideas that he develops in Dune across the other novels and short stories, and a lot of his other, I suppose, fiction outside of Dune. Excuse me, one second. Oi. Sorry. That's my dog just making a wild lot of noise there. I don't know how bad it's coming across there, folks. I just thought. But yeah, a lot of his a lot of the books that you see on the shelf here would have appeared as stories in magazine format really first, and then he kind of works them into novels, and it's a common thing. Frankly, that a story will appear magazine form one year and end up as a novel, slightly reworked, etc. the next. Just plonk that there. So Frank, I suppose, was notoriously bad at writing in the short story mode. I think he found it hard to keep within word lengths, and looking at the Dune series, don't find that hard to believe at all. I keep rereading Whipping Star. Really like his character McKee, says Cha. And I see many. What's your favorite? Yeah, so I must have missed that comment there. Very good, Whipping Star. Yeah, I see many of ideas developed later in Dune across his other novels and short stories. Yeah, that's certain things at a certain time, and I don't know. There's part of me that sometimes looks at some of Frank's stuff as pretty much a hangover from that kind of 50s sci-fi, if you like. But he starts to explore some quite interesting ideas in his work. I think I have a wee slideshow somewhere, which is kind of just where I organized his different books into kind of their main group themes that we could look at them in groups, I suppose. I must see if I can dig it out for you guys and pop it on the screen at some point. Excuse me. But I haven't really got round to reading the Jesus Incident, the Ascension Factor, and the Lazarus Effect. I haven't read those. But let's see. But yeah, I mean, he has a decent output as a writer, I think, especially when you consider the length of the Dune series. Um, but I have to say, apart from, I think the Dragon in the Sea, I think it's really tip top. You know, hello. It's a really good book. And I quite like. There's some sort of submarine fiction within science fiction, I suppose, that it goes hand. There's a little club of it, if you like, but we've got things like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, um, On the Beach, isn't it, by Neville Shute? You know, the submarine is kind of an interesting thing within sci-fi. I suppose there's some other good science, other good just submarine fiction. But if you're into your submarine books, I'd give it it's a really good thriller. And what have we got here? I was picking up more of the Mabinogion the first time I was reading Dune, to be honest. Welsh epics. The first time I was reading the Dune, to be honest. Mabinogion. Hi, so David, would you expand a bit? I suppose the Mabinogion is part of the matter of Britain, isn't it? Really, but it's your Welsh stories. We get early examples of. Goodness, now hang on. Could you grab that off the shelf? Would you? Oh, here, give me a wee second. I'll grab mine. Bob's your uncle. Mabinogion. 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 There we go. Bosh, the Mabinogion. What we dates have we got that? Yeah, why not? I suppose. Killich and Olin. Been ages since I read this. God, when did I know when I read this? I read this the year I got my lectureship, so I read this in 2004, I think. Yeah, it's I suppose there is a lot of what I suppose people call it Arthurian. I'd call it the Matter of Britain stuff in it, which is a big body of stories that covers about oh goodness gracious, arguably 1,500 years and is still going. I think, you know. But yeah, there's a lot of, I suppose, the idea of the Camelot pattern, David, is thoroughly there within Dune as well. And this is one of the things that we're saying is that there's so much in terms of myths and legends and so on and so forth. And there is a fundamental association with all of the stuff from the Matter of Britain back to the Greek and Roman stuff, particularly to do with the line of kings. Oh, there's a dog again. So that's an interesting, yeah. And I have to say, I love that stuff. Mabinogion, for those who don't know, is kind of a collection of Welsh. It's like I suppose, a Welsh epic stories. And what's the Merlin figure in that? Is he my name? Is he Talesian? Maybe. There's a set of, I suppose, characters in mythology that are quite similar. And there's Talesian, there's Tuan, I suppose, in Irish mythology, who's the kind of observer of the invasions. And they're kind of analogues to Tiresias from Greek mythology. Tiresias is the guy who's able to, who the gods keep, I suppose, if Hera doesn't like him, she curses him to become a woman. Zeus curses him to become a man. He gets to live as both genders. I think he even lives as snakes at some point. He's the famous blind seer that's used to sort of frame a number of stories. So yeah, there's definitely first time reading Dune, you get, I suppose, yeah, we were talking about our own cultural, what can we see in it? And absolutely, there's hints of I suppose there's hints of Irish mythology. There's Welsh, there's Scottish, there's European, and yeah, it's all over the place. And he is subtle. I often would have went with. I suppose I read a lot of different stuff like that, David. As you probably mentioned the Mabinogi, and I can go hey, here's mine. Is the thing. I love that kind of stuff. I have to say, I always got a real sense of the Arabian Nights from Dune. I have to say, whenever I was reading it. But I think it was possibly at the time I was reading a lot about Richard Burton and his translation of the Arabian Nights. Maybe that's why. Babs Bino says, I listened to Operation Haystack. If you're seeing hints of Dune, you must check it out. Feel as if it takes place in an alternate Dune universe. And Chaya's asking, is Operation Haystack a podcast, a book? Where are you listening? To get the info there. Operation Haystack. I don't. Yeah. That's one of those. Is that those posthumous books? Because I don't. This thing like science fiction classic. Oh, it's one of those. Hang on, short stories. Wonder what that would appear in. Many of the themes from Dune, matriarchal societies, clandestine overthrows. Yeah. There's a Kindle edition there on Amazon. I wonder, is that one of those ones, Babs? That's it's on YouTube. Says Babs, search for 3 short stories by Frank Herbert. That's just what I was wondering. I've got a couple of collections of his short stories. As usual, I love books that don't give you a contents page. What's that? Rat Race. That's really annoying. There's a book full of stories and they won't bother to let you know what they are. Let's see. We've got the Book of Frank Herbert here and the Worlds of Frank Herbert here. Let's just have a wee nosy at these. These are wee collections of short stories. Seed Stock. There you go. Gone Dogs. That's one I remember for some reason. Operation Syndrome, Occupation Force. What were we looking at there? No, it's a short story written in the 50s, says Babs. Because there was a couple of things that were published posthumously. I think I didn't really. Yeah, this one's got a Tactful Saboteur by the Book, Committee of the Whole, Mating Call, Escape Felicity, The GM Effect, The Featherbirders, Old Rambling House, and AWF Unlimited. That's that one's Seed Stock. Yeah, I'll have to have a look at that I one again. Seed Stock, the Rat Race. Gone Dogs. Yeah, I must have a wee look into that one. It's Babs is saying it's IRC. It's an audio Vox recording. There we go. Well, yeah, we've got a few bits and pieces here. Hopefully, it'll make things handy for us, as I said. And yeah, thanks for that, David. By the way, I was interested to see somebody pick. We're talking about picking up shades of our own cultures, our own myths, our old legends and literature, I suppose. And it really is interesting to me to see where we see things like that from our own culture, particularly because Dune is just so popular everywhere. But it is myth heavy, I think, and it uses mythology in a particular way. Do you know which short story collections books it's in? I think I have most, but I don't remember the titles of all the stories. You're the same as me, Chaya, my memory is just rubbish. I was having a look there through but it doesn't even have an index or a seeds. So this one's got reprints. There's books and stories in this that are in the other two. There's a nice picture of Duncan, Idaho, folks. By the book. Let me see. I literally have to flick through this. That's got some interesting. The Road to Dune's in here. Well, that's interesting. That could be an interesting wee thing to read to you folks, actually. Sometimes it's somebody was talking about just some wee scribblings by Frank Herbert, and we were talking about we have the John W. Campbell correspondence which is up in, I think it's in the, what was the book we were talking about there? The maker of Dune, Tactful Saboteur. Yeah, it's on. It's trying to remember. Cause Frank didn't write too many short stories. We wrote enough, I suppose. But whenever you tend to pick up these wee books, you tend to find what's that? Dragon in the Sea. This is excerpts as well from, by the looks of it, from the Dragon in the Sea too. So it's just one of these quickly compiled kind of. I don't know. I would feel a bit ripped off by a book like that, to be honest with you. Um, as I said, they're not all doozies, you know. So, but Frank's generally stuff is quite good. But some of his other stuff, I think, does feel quite antiquated these days. Babs, I don't know what book. I found it on audiobooks. It's there somewhere. I actually have a wee complete bibliography thing, so I'll tell you what. I'll try and figure it out for you for next time. If I can scribble that down. What was that title we were talking about? Operation Haystack. It rings a bell to me now. Haystack. That's the thing I think I was saying about reading short stories, folks, is that there's some of them that are really, really memorable. But I tend to read them in compilations, and you tend to lose a sense of who the author is when you read large clusters of short stories all together, you know. What about the Sun's books? You'll know Haystacks as soon as it starts. It sends it Zolatal tanks, yeah. Says, but that's the one. Well, yeah, he does reuse his stuff. James Smith says, "What about the Sun's books? Do you condemn them?" Not at all. Not my place to condemn anything. No. I've read. Let's see. I mean, I've read Man of Two Worlds up there, which is by Frank and Brian Herbert. So that's the two of them working together. In terms of the Kevin J. Anderson stuff, I read the two books that concluded the Dune series. I would have been like everybody else at the time. I was doing my PhD. I was researching it. My work was on Frank Herbert's, not Brian's. And I don't know. I enjoyed them okay. They really didn't feel like Frank's work at all. But I tried not to let that spoil it in any way. But I wasn't a big fan, but it was made sense to me in some ways, I suppose, and it gave me I went, okay, that's a conclusion to the story. I did read a few of. Then I read three more. I read the preludes, I suppose, going back a while. So that would have been what are they called? House Atreides, House Carino, and House Harkonnen. And I think that was me pretty much. And I think I've talked about this, James, that I'm not a big fan of franchises that just keep churning out stuff, and I think you pollute and dilute your work or that you're doing. I think it's the book that I think we talked about. I used to read a lot of fantasy, and then I think the book that put me off fantasy stories was The Rise of a Merchant Prince by Raymond E. Feist. Quite enjoyed his books for a while, the Midkemia novels, you know. But where are you going with this? I mean, he's just retelling the story of Lloyd's of London. And I was, in coffee, I just, you've had enough of this nonsense, you know. And it was about lack of original ideas. So I'm not out to condemn them, James. I think they write a certain type of book. It's popular. I think plenty of people like them. But as far as I'm concerned, I love the Dune series. Invest a lot of time myself in Frank Herbert's work. I've put years of my life into it. But I've got plenty of other things I'd rather read. I suppose the real joy of the Frank Herbert's books is I've said this before, folks. I liked it when they were unfinished. Excuse me. And as a classicist, I'm used to reading things that are from the ancient world that are unfinished or fragmented or partly lost, and I like to wonder. And part of me was a bit gutted when they gave us an end to the story. I suppose. But no, it's not my place to condemn them. I think it's just that there's a sad fact and I wouldn't condemn them. Books are great things, you know, and I think Frank would be glad for his son to be making a living off them at the very least, you know. but they have a separation of quality that's hard to remove in your mind. I suppose it's I don't know. So it's they just don't feel right. I suppose, I don't really know how else to put it. But June has a kind of sort of an intellectual feel to it. Not it's an intelligent book. And Frank Herbert's stamp is all over it, and it's once you get to know Frank, as you know, we're talking a wee bit about, we can see Frank's ideas here, there. He's very much into his ideas and trying to share them in a certain way. He doesn't want to be pushy and shove them down your throat, and he's not trying to be, he's trying to be. He is a subtle writer, and I think he certainly tries to look at things in different ways. I mean, if the Dune series alone proves that, I think if you look at the certain things change. You can see Frank changing as a writer as the books progress. I think Ransom did a much better job of maintaining Frank's voice. He finished the last after Frank passed, using outlines and pasted the work out together. Yeah, I've read a wee bit about them working together on that book, those books. That's kind of why I was interested in having a look at them, but I haven't got around to reading them because I've skimmed them. Jesus Incident Trilogy with Ransom. Thank you, Chai. There's an interesting foil to June that still has a harsh environment but set on waterworlds, not desert. And that Ransom did a much better job of maintaining Frank's voice. We finished the letter after Frank passed, using outlines and pacing the work out together. I'm going to say that Brian's voice isn't too bad with Frank's in Man of Two Worlds, to be honest. So I suppose that makes the discerning. I suppose that the voice that doesn't seem to fit Kevin J. Anderson's, maybe. I don't honestly know. I think you'd be hard pressed to get anybody to write like Frank. But I don't see, by the way, the hatred for them, if you know what I mean. Um, I think I'm not too immersed on online culture and things like Twitter and all this stuff, but he does seem to get a lot of hate from fans. And he gets a lot. I think Brian Herbert and Kevin Jameson, I think their stuff's liked by a lot of people, but I think it's certainly polarized a lot of Dune fans, and it's not a thing worthy of hatred. I think. I don't know if you agree with me or not. I know there's a lot of people really don't like them, and I think feel that they're kind of disrespectful, or that they're a money milking machine, just money making, that they're mercenary in some way, and I suppose the only thing about that ties in with that, I suppose that I don't really have a problem with them writing all these books. The one thing I have a problem with, and you'll know it because I've told you about, I have a problem with what they did about that. I don't like it at all. I think it's nasty, and let's get rid of this. Romans have a thing called memento damnatio. It's to remove something from existence from a history, to wipe it out, to pretend it doesn't exist. I think I was just commenting that was it the singer Elvis Costello, in an attempt to sell cinema, music concert tickets and promote his own song, has kind of put out a very bizarre kind of what's it, Oliver's Army. I'd want to change the lyrics in this song, and I don't want the radio ever to play it again. And it's got derogatory comments about the Troubles, I suppose, and the N word, and how it refers to British soldiers, Northern Irish people, etc., etc. And he's attempting to wipe his own. I think he's basically saying, "Well, I'm going to be remembered for this song, and I don't want to be remembered for using the N word and referring to Northern Ireland and the Irish people and British soldier, etc. that way." And it's kind of I think he should leave it be. He's trying to kind of alter. It's an alteration of something that's happened in the past to present a new form of history, I suppose. Things happen. Expecting Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson's books to be like Frank's is like expecting a veggie burger to taste like a beef burger. Yeah, I don't know. I'll I'll give you a musical comparison, I suppose, Babs. It's oh goodness, if you can bear with me one wee second, uh I get the right guy right. Yeah, it's we'll go with Led Zeppelin, shall we, Babs? You might appreciate this. John Bonham. Do you understand where I'm going with this? Um, or vice versa, says James. Yeah, a beef burger, you can't expect it to taste like a veggie burger. John Bonham's son didn't. Took his father's place, didn't he, in Led Zeppelin? Um, and by all accounts, acquitted himself. I've seen him play mightily well, and became a simply put that nobody can drum like John Bonham except possibly his son, because he taught. And it's one of those ones where the son can, as his own man, but is able to. Yeah, I thought that was a good example of that. But yeah, within writing, it is such a hard thing, I suppose, the authorial voice. And the other thing maybe is this, that there's a degree of mystery to the authorial voice in Dune, I suppose. Within in terms of our omniscient narrator. But there we go. But no, I think they're just fine. But I'm not going to rush out and buy them. Not that I buy too many new books, but it is they're a franchise as the way I look at it. And as I said, somebody sent me a list of how many stories there were the other day, and I think Dune was number 23 on the list of stories, and in the Dune universe, and that you've got all these prequels and preludes and things like that before you even get to the story, and then all of these, and I suppose it in such a detailed thing, and I think it's really great from my point of view that Dune has become a thing that people are looking at and that they're studying and wanting to study, even in academia. When I did this, nobody would touch it. Go near it with a barge pole. Was that you, James? That was thank you for that. That was some epic list. I just went, oh my god, really? Is it that? Is there that much? I was gobsmacked. I think you sent, was it nearly 50 short stories or books or etc. on that list. It was a ridiculous. And I just go, honestly, amphitheaters of Dune. Sun cream of Dune, I think, would be a good one. Babs, but listen, yes, Jason play. Was that Jason as a kid sat in on a rehearsal and the guys didn't notice until Bonzo cleared them. There we go. That's crazy. I was actually just thinking about it, James, because especially with helping Cara launching her wee book, and the way I've kind of published my PhDs in terms of doing these videos all these years later. But I'm thinking about maybe getting in talks with somebody might be adding my book to your collection at some point, James. We'll have to see. We might try and turn the PhD into a novel, not a novel, but a book. I suppose it would be Evolution, Ecology, and the Messianic Hero, wouldn't it? In Frank Herbert's Dune series. But yeah, start just having a wee think about that today. Possibly might self-publish. I don't know, but we're looking into getting a few things moving and grooving along, as they say here. But it's shown, yeah, that there's a real interest, I suppose, regardless of what you think about Brian and how the Herbert Foundation's moved on with Kevin J. Anderson and so on. And I would point out that it's interesting that KJA writes in the Sloan universe, and when Dune is meant to be a response to that kind of hero. So it's interesting to see that he's both writing the Dune stories and the stories that they're meant to be a response against, a critique against, if you like, that kind of Van Vottian hero. But yeah, so sometimes sometimes the son can be as good as the father, and it reminds me of the Odyssey when Odysseus finally meets Telemachus, and father and son get to slaughter all the suitors together. It's a real bonding moment for. Well, there we go. Listen, folks, I've run on a wee bit anyway. It's 11:20, so I'll tell you what we'll do. It's really nice for all of you to join me tonight. I'm sorry we got cut off. And I said we'll start putting these things into we'll create a playlist for this, and hopefully we'll all be on the same page and have all read chapter one by Sunday, and we'll have a right old tear into the thing, get our book club going, and just keep riding that horse all the way down the road until we get to the end of it. I think things moving. You'll have one or two fictions of your own tucked in a drawer somewhere. I do actually. Yeah, and I suppose I've published a poem up here. I had a song published a long time ago, but I kind of life is one of those things that happen to me. Colleges, but my goals in life once upon a time were either to become a lecturer or a writer, and I've done one of those, and I've kind of done the other. Um, but yeah, just life got a bit crazy for a while, and yeah, it's popping on this. The COVID, I suppose, got me onto YouTube and deciding to lift up this sort of my work was kind of buried, as I said, in a kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark kind of way. So yeah, actually we're thinking on setting up maybe just trying to help build the station a wee bit. We might be looking into putting things up on Patreon and maybe creating a membership. And I don't want to particularly alienate any of my viewers in any kind of way, but we're trying to think I have to offer them something, don't I? And so I'm considering possibly writing a novel on the station and publishing it on the station in terms of maybe just reading it at a certain point. But I don't know. I've got that many ideas. I'm a bit of an ideas machine myself. It's just trying to get it all done with two sets of hands that are badly damaged and a very wheezy throat. Publishing would be great. You'd be able to put back in what you cut out for length and ideas you've gotten since you did the PhD. Sadly, Baz, just because of a computer disaster a wee while back, I lost it. So what you see is what you get. I mean, it's in my head, but I'd have to rewrite it all. And the interesting thing, I suppose, is if you look at the sort of the feminist aspect of the Bene Gesserit and stuff like that, the idea is if you can't get your work into a PhD, you hope that somebody else kind of goes on with it. So the likes of Cara Kennedy's work covers a fair chunk, particularly when I was going to look at sex, gender, things like female agency, the Bene Gesserit, or really looking at women's roles. Because I kind of wanted to set out my stall in terms of major themes. Evolution had to be the dominant one because all of these others are intertwined around it. So some of the stuff has actually been covered by other people, but at the same time, it wouldn't mind just maybe trying to make it a bit more accessible and get it out, even if it's just as an ebook, and maybe do it reasonably cheaply. I don't know, but darn the crashes. Yeah, it is just a thing. I suppose they do happen. But I'm in a particular bother just trying to keep my old technology up to date. I've been running computers that are 22 years old, and colleges and cannibals. Thanks for the answer. Sorry, Keith. No, I'm one of these people that always finds it quite hard to say goodbye. It takes me a while. Colleges and cannibals, so don't worry about it too much. I will have a good night, but I will wrap up. And I think my computer's poking about as well as it wants to update itself or something. But the joys of it, yeah. So listen, folks, thank you very much. I will wrap it up for tonight. Thank you all for joining me, and we'll see you here on Sunday at 9 o'clock GMT. And if you haven't got your first chapter of Dune read, that'll give you time to get that done. It's only about 9 pages, and we'll pile into this thing and get going. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you, says thanks, Doc, says Chad. Thank you very much for joining us, folks. And I'm sorry about the wee crash. These things happen. They don't happen too often. So hopefully we'll all be good next time. And we'll see you on Sunday. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining me. And spread the word. And hopefully that we'll get this ship sailing on 9 p.m. GMT on Sunday. Thanks very much, folks. All the very best, and look after yourselves no matter where you are. Take care. It has been fun, James. Actually, I think this is going to be a bit of a giggle. So there we go. Take it easy, folks. All the best now, and good night. Bye bye. And there we go. Bye.